Welcome to Third Eyesight. I'm your host, Juan Francisco, and I'm a spiritual intuitive who practices tarot card reading and mediumship. I've always been super curious about the supernatural and paranormal, and I'm here to share my stories and interview folks who want to share their own stories. Let's get to it. I'm here with Priyanka, and Priyanka, tell us where you're based.
Hi, Juan. Thank you for having me, first and foremost. I'm based out of Mississauga, Ontario, which is a suburb of Toronto, Canada.
Wonderful. So all the way from Canada. I mean, we're not that far from each other. I'm in New York City, but I'm going to say we're a continent apart, which sounds very far. But so awesome. I'm so excited to speak with you. So Priyanka and we met actually through our mutual buddy, Natalie Namaste, who is a wonderful tarot reader. And I've done some readings for Priyanka on my own live tarot sessions on Instagram, but we've gotten to know each other a little more, and she has some interesting supernatural experiences. So I first want to ask you, what was your introduction to the topic of the supernatural? Is this something you grew up with your family, or did you discover it in your childhood or later on in life?
I always was deeply spiritual. I was also somebody who was intuitive right from a very young age. My grandmother was very big into spirituality, and I think she planted that seed in my head. And I think after her passing is when I really realized the true potential of what I had. And it got her passing in a way of getting closure for me was getting more in touch with that side that she always, you know, tried to coax me towards. And I think I was young, I wasn't sure, you're not confident, you're confused, you're like, am I really feeling this? Are premonitions real? And like once she passed, I think I got more deeply spiritual, and it helped me have the closure of her loss, but also helped me find who I am and my true self as well.
Yeah, and that's wonderful to hear. And sometimes the passing of a loved one will do that to us. I can relate to that. And you said that your grandmother had an interest in this field, this topic as well. Could you delve into a bit like how your grandmother interacted with the supernatural?
Definitely. So I feel like my grandma was a healer and definitely an empath. She was always talking about things like, Priyanka, ground yourself. Make sure you go hug a tree sometimes. If you're feeling kind of down and out, walk on grass barefoot. She's like, do these things to ground yourself. She's like, meditate, like listen to, chants and stuff like that. So she was always into it. And like, it was funny because like my family used to be like, oh, your grandmom, like if she says something, it always comes true. So it comes true. So they'd be like, oh, she has like a black tongue. Like, God forbid if she says something about something, it's going to happen. So, she always felt things. And I think being a doctor, that she, even though she was a medical doctor, she was so deeply spiritual. I feel like a lot of people, once she passed, came and told me about how she had helped them in a spiritual way, or like, guided them and coaxed them rather than just dispensing medicine. And like, she was a true born healer. So I think maybe I come from a line of healers because I definitely have a lot of similar gifts. And it's many years ago, I had a psychic even tell me, they're like, your grandmom left you the gift that she had, and it's her way of passing down, but also keeping connected with you as well. So
That's beautiful. And we're going to get into your own intuitive abilities in just a second. I want to first ask you, are there any childhood experiences that you remember or experiences you remember growing up with the supernatural or odd things that happened to you in your childhood?
I remember one instance. I was really young, like so much so I remember being in like a cot, and I remember it was like late at night, and I looked out of the window. I was at my grandparents' place, and there was somebody walking, and I remember waking up, or actually no, a couple of years down the road, asking my grandmom, "Did you have somebody who worked the nights? Like, because in India there was a thing about security and stuff, so sometimes they had security guards." And she goes, "No," and I was like, "Well, I saw this person," and he told me to shh, and like he walked by, and she's like, "That's interesting. There's nobody." And I remember many years later, even my mom saying, she's like, "Priyanka, you always had premonitions. You'd always be like, I've seen this person in my dreams before. How am I meeting them now?" And it's funny because my mom would be like, "I always asked you, who are you going to meet next? Like, what's going to happen next?" And she's like, "I feel like I pressured you sometimes. So, like, you stopped, going into that realm as well because you just felt that pressure being at a young age as well." So I just remember that person sticking out to me who wasn't even a real person. I don't know who he was or spirit that was. But yeah, that was my first memory.
Wow. And there hasn't since then been any hints as who he could have been, or and he was walking outside of a window?
Yeah, walking out. So they had a bungalow style home. So it was on the ground level. He was walking outside, and it was, I believe it was the summer. So they had the windows open, but they had netting because India has mosquitoes. So I remember clearly him just across the net. And like, I could describe him to a T. And like, I described him to my dad actually just last Christmas. We were talking about it. And I was like, do you know who this person is? Because I'm like, it's such a vivid memory for somebody who was so young, but I have no idea who he was. And my dad's like, no, like, no idea who that is. So it's interesting. I'm not sure. Maybe it was a guide, or maybe, I don't know, just an energy that was passing.
Yeah. And I'm going to play the role of of skeptic here. So is there a chance that it could have been someone outside walking by, like a human being walking by the window? And if not, like what made you feel convinced that it was something otherworldly?
I think being somebody who always has like late night um, things with spirits and stuff, I remember it being late night. They had they didn't have security, but they had like gates, so it wasn't like somebody could just enter their premises like without actually being able to open the gate, which was locked, unless he jumped the fence, which could possibly be. But I mean, in my heart of hearts, I don't think it was a real being, because the smirk on his face and just the way he like glided across was very quote unquote human like, if I may say so.
Did you just say he glided like
Yeah,
across?
yeah.
Oh, okay, I didn't catch that. So it's like he wasn't like his stride didn't seem like a human walk across. Wow, that's interesting. That's interesting. Wow. And so are there any other childhood experiences? I know we're going to talk about a certain vehicle accident you had where you had a very meaningful experience with the soul of your grandmother, but were there any other experiences before that major moment?
I remember going to the school and looking at one of the teachers, and I'm like, I've seen them before. And I went home and told my mom, and she's like, yeah, you described this person to me in a dream of yours. So
Wow.
yeah, I remember being young and having premonitions and just having this like stomach feeling, like this feeling of like, recognizing people and recognizing energies, even at that time of like, I gravitated towards some people. I was much more introverted than I am now. So I think at that time I was still trying to figure out who and what, and like what energies I was drawn to. So yeah, I think having premonitions from a young age, and like I don't have clear memories of, but my mom would say, like, you would say, oh, this is going to happen, and it would happen. Or you said, I've met this person, and you could describe certain characteristics of them without even having met them as well. So
Wow. I have a friend of mine who, and I mentioned this in a past episode in an interview, that I have a good friend of mine who is not does not believe in these things as we do. Like is more traditionally religious, Catholic religious. But she swears to me that she remembers dreaming about meeting me before she met me. And this is someone who is does not believe in psychic ability. So if someone like that who is not open to these kinds of beliefs like we are swears that she dreamt of meeting me before she met me, there's something to that.
of course there is, of course,
Yeah.
and that shows you like even you can be a skeptic, but there are instances in your life that you can't answer with science. And I think everyone has it in them, like that spiritual self, that intuitive nature, that being an empath. Some
Hmm.
people like us are more attuned into that, whereas some people are just skeptical because it's like, that's what religion has taught you. Like, oh, you should not believe in this. You shouldn't believe in that conformed belief system and practices. But when instances like she had the dream of meeting you before she actually did happen, makes them question. And that's also irky for some people, right? Because it's like, what am I to believe? And it makes people question everything that they've believed, and what their value system and the core is as well. So that's interesting.
Totally. And in your case, did you? I know you grew up with a grandmother who seemed, I'm going to call it spiritually. I mean, these kinds of beliefs are nothing new, but I think in our day and age, it's still considered very progressive to tap into psychic ability. So, knowing that you grew up with a grandmother like that, outside of that, did you grow up in a family that was spiritually very open minded, or did you grow up with traditional religion? What was that case for you?
I would say like a hybrid. Like for my grandma at her time and age when she was what how she was, it was way ahead of her time. Like it was not normal. My mother's always believed it. My mother is, I would say, like somebody who is religious, but isn't like a hardcore like God is everything. She's more about like practicality as well. And my dad initially always thought like it was hocus pocus, as he says. But when I started predicting stuff and stuff that came to fruition, he was like, okay, you're not just talking shit. Like it actually, and like he now comes to me and he's like, so what's your thoughts on this? Like, what's your energy on this? Like, on this? What's your read on this? And he listens to me. Like, sometimes I feel like parents have this notion of wanting to do things. He had this notion where he's like, oh, I want to go for cataract surgery, but I want to go to India and do it because, there the doctors answer your questions. Because in Canada, free healthcare, nobody answers questions. And he kept trying to book flights. Something wasn't working out. And finally, I was like holding back and I'm like, Papa, you're not meant to go. I'm like, I just get this feeling you're not supposed to go. Can you just stop trying, please? And right away he's like, okay, why didn't you tell me this before? And I'm like, because sometimes I just don't want to say something and put it out in the universe. But I'm like, you gotta believe me. Like things aren't working out or aren't aligning for a reason. So they've become, I think they're much more open minded. My dad's brother as well is he's into feng shui and all of that. He's also spiritual, but I wouldn't call him a healer. I would say he's like more somebody who's open to different things as well. But yeah, definitely, my grandmom was somebody way ahead of her time, and it wasn't like the normal or the norm at that stage.
Yeah. And so share with us your experience with your grandmother after she passed when she transitioned to being in spirit, and the car accident that you experienced.
So actually, even before the car accident, it was really hard for me to have closure because my grandmom raised me, and like I call her my soulmate. I still do. I remember telling my dad, her youngest son was my dad's youngest brother. He had Parkinson's, and I remember going to her funeral and like telling my dad, I'm like, we call him Chacha, which means uncle in our language, saying, I feel like he's going to pass in the next 6 months. And 6 months to the day, he passed away. And it
Mm.
was really hard for me to have closure. But I remember having this dream where I was laying in bed and my grandmom came and she was hugging, spooning me from behind and just like stroking my hair. And she's like, Priyanka, she's like, I had to go. She's like, I wanted to be there to, bring him on the other side. She was in the Indian Army, so she traveled a lot for work. So she had sent her three sons to boarding school. And my youngest uncle had gone to boarding school at the age of 6 or something, really young. So she never really had that chance to, nurture him and look after him. And she's like, this is like, she's like, I was meant to go so I could be there to look after him on the other side. And that actually gave me the closure I needed because that dream, even though I don't think it was a dream, I think it was really her coming to visit me. It really gave me that closure and it gave me the strength to know that she did something not even for herself, she did it in a selfless way as well. And then fast forward, I was in this car accident in 2016 and it's crazy because like I wanted to go a different way and like last minute I'm like, no, I'll just go straight and make the next left. So I'm in the left turning lane and I'm stopped at a red light. I look behind me and this person's coming really fast into my car and I'm like, oh my god, like if she hits me, I'm probably not going to make it. And I remember bracing for impact and like having this moment of like, this is it, and like complete white surrounding me, like this white kind of like I don't know, I wouldn't say rings, but like this angel like smog kind of thing around me, and thinking, oh my god, this is it. And luckily, she there was a car in front of me, so I took most of the impact. But had there been no car in front of me, I would have gone into oncoming traffic. And I remember going for a psychic reading maybe a year or so later, and the lady was like, you're prone to car accidents, and that's interesting because I was told that as well by somebody else. And she's like, that white you saw wasn't your near death; it was your grandmom protecting you, and your grandmom always sits in your car in your back seat to protect you because she knows you're prone to car accidents. And I look at that moment as like, it could define you and like give on giving up on life. And for me, it gave me that self of wanting to do things differently and live for the greater good and not just be so stuck in my bubble. So I just say it was the best worst thing to happen. And
Mm.
you know, thank God for my grandmom. She also said I have lots of angels and like guides, and you've connected with one of my exes who also protects me. So I know I am protected, and it was just that reinforcement that, when you had that belief and that core thing of like you are protected and you are going to be okay, and like things are going to, like, shit hits the fan, sorry if I may say so, but like life happens, and you have people who love you on the other end as well, who are there protecting you. So I think that's a really beautiful feeling as well.
100%. And to give folks some context, I had a conversation with Priyanka maybe 2 3 months ago, and I didn't expect to channel her grandmother and her ex for her. It just kind of happened, and they came through, and that's what Priyanka was referring to. And so Priyanka, when you experienced a visitation from your grandmother in that dream, how soon was that before she passed, or was it after she, like, is that how you found out that she had passed to receiving that visitation, or
So I found out after she had passed. So I went for her funeral. Like, we flew to India for her funeral. I would say this was like about a year after her passing. Also, at that point, I didn't get religious, but I used to go to the Sikh temple, which is called a Gurdwara, to meditate, because I felt like that was my space where she was big into Sikhism as well. So that's felt like a connecting point for us. And I remember being deep in meditation and looking up and seeing her standing there to my right in all white, and like she always was into meditation beads, so she had a meditation beads. That was the first time I saw her, not in a dream form, but actually there.
wow.
Yeah.
And what was the amount of time between when she visited you in that dream and this experience at the Sikh temple? What was the amount of time between those experiences and the car accident?
Me seeing her twice was like probably within the next 2 years after she had passed.
Okay.
So a car accident happened in 2016, and it's crazy. It happened right before I was turning 30, 3 days before my 30th. I would say it was like 7 years in between that, but like I've always felt her presence, and I've always been told by people like psychics and intuitives, like, your grandmom is fiercely protective of you, especially when it comes to the men you meet. She's like, if she doesn't like you, I think I've told you this, like, if she doesn't like them, they're gone.
So you don't have to do much of the work. Like, if they're not meant for you, if she doesn't like them, they're just gonna they're gone, like you said.
Yeah,
Easy.
it'll be like strange things, like somebody's mother got diarrhea, or like they got a flu.
That's funny. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
she's funny. Like, my grandma's hilarious. She's got jokes, and it's funny because like whoever I was seeing recently, like, somebody came up and they're like, "Your grandma really doesn't like this guy." She's like, "Why are you hanging out with this deadbeat guy? Like, you deserve better. He's not worthy of you." And I was like, "No."
Wow.
My grandma was straight. Like, I think if you know me, I'm like no bullshit, straight to the point, matter of fact. And I think she was very much like that. So when the lady gave me that message, I just chuckled because I'm like, that's something my grandma would be like, "Why are you losing sleep over this man?"
Oh my goodness. It's something that I remember a psychic telling me that my grandmother also, I've been told that she helps me out with my dating life too. So I don't know. Everyone could use a grandma that tells
Yeah.
them, listen, like they get real with us, and they say, listen, you got to move on, or they're not worth your time.
Yeah. Oh, and it's funny because like I've come to this conclusion. Like, I think we both have, like, we have those spirits and guides who protect us. But like, if things aren't working out, if things aren't aligning, stop trying to push and stop trying to make them align, because it's not happening for a reason. And I think this last person I've seen, like, that was my biggest life lesson. Like, I think I spent 6 months of yo-yoing, and I couldn't understand why. And then once I walked out of that, when you're so deep in the bushes, you don't realize. But when you have that perspective of once you walk away, you're like, oh my God, there was my grandma dropping signs. There was,
Mm,
like, things were happening, and things that don't happen on a usual basis. Like, not a bad person, not the right person for me.
yeah. Now I know that you work with intuition yourself and you practice your own intuitive ability. Could you delve into what Well, it sounds like you've been experiencing your intuitive ability since you were very, very young, but recently you've been offering readings to folks. And I would like to ask you, like, how did you start delving into that space of doing readings for people, whether for work or just as for the purpose of practicing? Like, how did you delve into that, and what inspired you to do that?
I think I do it more so to help people. I don't think I do it for financial means. I think it's just from my practice. I think I got into it maybe in the last 3, 4 years. After my car accident, I feel like something opened, like the third eye opened even again. Like I think growing up, maybe up until my 20s, I was very in touch with my spiritual self. And then life happens, you establish yourself, you have this career, you have, all of the superficial stuff. You lose your sounding board, you lose your, being grounded. And I remember just doing a reading for one of my friends, like his dad had passed away. And I was just like, so and so, I feel like you should hear this message because in case you didn't have closure with your dad's passing, like I want you to know this message. And there's no way in hell, not hell, but there's no way in any which
No
way
way in heaven. No, I don't
that
know.
heaven that I would know like that detail. Or even in 2019, I was on holiday in India and like one of my friends, her dad had passed away. I feel like dads love me for whatever reason, and I always channel male, more so male than female, which is interesting.
Hmm.
And she's like scientific, like your friend you had mentioned. I was like, hey, what's with the timepiece? Why aren't you looking after it? And she goes, what do you mean? I'm like, your dad keeps showing me like a manual like timepiece that you have to manually um, wind up. And she goes, how do you know? And I'm like, it's in some nice box too. And she goes, yeah, it's a collector's item. It's a collector's watch. And I'm like, why aren't you looking after it? It needs constant, like care. And she goes, how did you know that? And I'm like, well, that's what he keeps showing me. Your granddad comes forward too. And I'm like, he has this message. And she was just like, I'm not leaving tonight. So she spent the night in my hotel room because she was so spooked.
Oh.
I threw the whole science out of the window for her because she's like, how do you know this? And I was just like, I don't know. And like, I think for me, it's like I channel messages. It's like, it's not, I don't hear voices. It's in my own voice. I get the message. Sometimes I get visuals as well. And like that tummy feeling, that feeling of like, if something's not meant right, like I get that stomach feeling and I'm just like, I would say like a gut feeling, but stronger. And I'm just like, I've learned to listen to it. And I enjoy helping people and like giving people the closure that they need sometimes, because sometimes, you don't get to have that last conversation. You don't get to know what was that last moment or like the last few feelings that they had
Hmm.
as well. So I think it's nice to be able to help people. I'm blessed that I only channel like good energies. I haven't channeled, knock on wood, any sort of dark energy as well. And I'm very much about helping other people. And I feel like having such a protective force and spirit guides that I do, that I'm able to help people, but it's not like I'm not sending any like nasty messages or any like messages that would make people uncomfortable.
Right. Well, it's wonderful to my light just went on. Well, I have a timer on my light. It is not
Okay.
spirit.
I was
Just
like,
saying. Yeah, for those listening, my light, I have an automatic light bulb that goes on at 7 p.m. Eastern in my room, and it went on by itself. So it's not spirit. It's, I'm not going to say her name, but
oh yeah, oh yeah, I
a
have this.
product by Amazon. Because if I
Oh
say
yeah,
her name, she's going to start talking to me. Anyways, it's wonderful to get to know and to know another light worker like yourself who is doing this to help people. Um and you were saying something about how, growing up, you were tapped into your intuition, then life progresses in a way where you occupy your mind with work, with school, and you kind of like tap out of it for a bit. And I remember I sometimes look back and I think in my early 20s, like if I were to know then what I feel and know now, like I feel like, I mean, I don't want to say I missed out on something because everything happens in its right timing, but I can't believe I lived life not being aware of this stuff. I was the same person, but I was another person. It's just
right.
different.
We're
Yeah.
also Geminis, right? So we go through phases. And think of it this way, like you're not living your entire life not being aware. It was only a period of time. So most, I would say like 80% plus people go through their whole life not tapping into their spiritual side. So
Right.
you had a period of time of not tapping in, but now you're fully tapped in and like do your readings, which you're doing an awesome job as well. So, and we're also Gemini. So I think we go through phases, right? Like we go into the phase of like being very much in touch with ourselves and then just being in a phase where you're like, I don't want to be in touch with anything. I don't want to feel any feelings and just like live in my little glass box.
Yep. Yep. Gemini tribe. We need like a you know how like fraternities have like the hand signs? We should be just as annoying and have like a Gemini hand, whatever. Anyways, do you ever get spooked? Like you were saying how your friend, when she heard that message from her father and her grandfather, she felt so spooked that she stayed the night with you. Do you easily get spooked, or does it not, none of this phases you, like doesn't really creep you out?
I don't think I get spooked unless like somebody's like taking me to a place where somebody's passed away or like, death energy. I mean, the one time I got spooked was I remember being at university and I was at one of my girlfriend's homes. The town called St. Catharines, Ontario, is known to be haunted. Like it's known to be have a history of like hauntings and stuff. And she had one of those old school homes which had like the glazing panel in the front next to the front door, so you could see outside, but like kind of blurry. And I remember being on the staircase and I was talking to my boyfriend at that time. And I remember looking up because I was sitting at the staircase right in front of the front door. And I look up and there's a little girl and she's like, put her hands around her eyes and she's like peeping in. And I was like, and it was a snowstorm. So I'm like, what's this kid doing out? So I like quickly jump up and go towards the front door. And there's nobody there. There's no footsteps leading up to the staircase as well. So I was like, that was spooky because I was like, who did I see? Turned out it was the owner's daughter who had passed away.
Wow, like the landlord's daughter, the landlord, or
Yeah, so not the landlord. I think it was one of the previous owners many years ago. Their daughter
wow,
passed away, and because I described the girl I saw, and they were like, "Yep, that's her," and she sometimes comes to visit. And I'm like, hmm.
wow.
And at that point, I wasn't really in touch with my um self, but it was interesting because St. Catharines is a very spiritual town. I remember also taking me being me. You only use this taxi service run by women because women empowerment. And I remember being in one of these taxis and she had a big dream catcher, like an indigenous First Nations dream catcher. It wasn't one of those, tacky which you buy on Walmart or whatever, but it was a genuine.
Yeah, like a real legit dream catcher, not yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I remember just chatting with her and I was like, oh, like talk to me about the dream catcher. And we started talking. She looked at me and she's like, you don't know your gift yet. Give it a couple of years. She's like, you'll know your gift. And she's like, when you embrace it, so many miracles will happen for other people. You're meant to heal others. And at that point, I was like, okay, lady, like, thank you. Like. And then a couple months later, I remember like I lived at the bottom half of this home and my cousin always had everyone come for readings to me because he's like, oh, my cousin, she can predict stuff and all. I remember it was like randomly he brought one of his friends down and they come down for a reading and this black cat follows them. And next thing we know, like we finished the reading and like the black cat had tried running into my home and it didn't get in. And next thing we know, the black cat is at the end of the street when we go up. And it was like really bizarre that it kept showing up in random spots that we were in. And I was like, whose cat is this? And I've never seen the cat in the neighborhood. And my friend was like, oh, like, I don't know whose cat it is, but he's like, I feel like it's been following me for days because he said he saw the same cat a couple of days ago.
That's
And
weird.
he doesn't live in the neighborhood as me. So that was kind of spooky because I was like, whose cat is this? And the person driving the taxi saying, oh, you don't know your gift. And those were things that kind of spooked me, but not to the point where I was like, oh my god, I need to hide under my bed or something. But I feel like now when I look back at it, it's comical. But at that point, it was just like, what's going on? And like, animals are drawn to healers as well. So
They are.
yeah, I feel like that's an interesting thing because I'm not a cat person. And a couple weekends ago, I go to my girlfriend's home and like 6 of her cats are sitting all around me. Like I'm like queen bee, and these cats are like my little helpers or whatever. And I was just like, what's going on? I
You're a
don't
cat
like.
goddess.
I'm like, I like cats, but yeah, like I think once you start realizing you're always protected, you're divinely protected, and it's not like the evil never really rules you unless you give into that fear or you give into that you get into that vibration of fear. So no, I try to keep myself grounded. Um, of course, there are places where I go where I'm like, I don't feel good energy and I don't want to be in this space. But yeah, like overall, I don't think I get spooked easily.
And see, I like getting spooked, but when I went on a recent paranormal investigation, two of them, usually they're open to the public, so there are people there that don't do this kind of work or um don't really have the same interests in the paranormal or supernatural to the extent that we do, that we're so used to hearing stories. So they're there in the tour group and they're really scared. And I'm here like, oh, they're just, I literally told somebody, ghosts, quote unquote. I mean, I like to call them ghosts.
Yeah.
But ghosts are just I mean, we're also ghosts. We're just in physical
Right.
bodies. Like, we're all ghosts. We're all spirits. And to me, it's so normal to interact with spirit, but the people with me, they're like, "Oh, what's that? Oh, no, don't go over there." And I mean, listen, I don't like dark corners. I don't like being in complete darkness. I'm afraid of the dark, and I'm afraid of death too. But I think because I'm so fascinated by it all, and
Yeah.
because I'm so used to talking to dead people pretty often now, like, or at least in more intentionally talking to them. I think I always have. Um, it's less of a shock to me when
Yeah.
things happen like at a haunted, like, I don't know. The thing is, Hollywood makes like haunted houses seem like really bad places, but there's so much to say about that too. But
But I think you nailed it. Like we all are spirits, we all are souls, some in physical form and some have moved on, but everyone's in their own journey.
right,
And like, yeah, like I wouldn't be like if somebody was like, "Oh my god, don't go there. Oh my god, don't go there." I'd be like, "Let's go. Come, I'll take you."
I know. I'll protect you.
Yeah, I'm like, you're protected. Like you said, Hollywood makes it seem like all gory, scary, bloody, and everything. And I'm like, it's far from that. Because even the spirits that are, not at peace have gone through some trauma for them to behave the certain way. They don't get to mischief or getting to doing things the way they do because they wanted to. It's circumstances or like an untimely death or something that made them, resort to being that way, or like attention or lack of attention as well. So I think coming at it from an approach of empathy and just trying to be kind, I think also goes places.
Yeah. What advice do you have for someone who is just recently, I'm gonna say, rediscovering their intuitive abilities? I believe they're always there. They never come in all of a sudden or leave us and come back. So what advice would you have for someone who is rediscovering their intuitive abilities and doesn't know what to do next?
Be kind to yourself. I think also this whole thing of like, I need to know everything now doesn't work. Like it comes in steps and it comes with ebbs and flows. There'll be days where you feel super connected. You feel like you can like channel anything and everything. You can be the horse whisperer, you can be the dog whisperer, and you can be the human whisperer. And there can be days where you don't feel anything and you're just like, why aren't I tapping into it? And it's like just understand that everything has ebbs and flows and be kind to yourself. Understand that this is a journey. Like is born spiritual or nobody is like 100% spiritual. Like we all have the essence in us. It's how much you tap into and just like keep yourself grounded. I think that's very important because a lot of people I think don't want to be in touch with their spiritual self, so they use alcohol, they use drugs as a means of getting away from it, and also diet. I think like when you eat crappy, when you are trying to be spiritual and you are eating crappy or you're eating like super processed foods and stuff, that affects you as a person and your emotions. So being mindful of like, taking good care of yourself mentally, physically, emotionally, just being kind to yourself and knowing like this is a journey, this is not a destination. Like being spiritual doesn't mean you reach nirvana. Like if that was the case, we would all be in ecstasy all the time. So
Mhm.
just like living in the moment, being kind and not putting that pressure on yourself. I feel like we as a society are taught that if you're doing something, you have to do it at 100%. It's okay to do it at 40%. It's okay to pace it out. I think that would be my advice.
I needed to hear that because so thank you for sharing that, because I think as much as anyone who's listening who could use this advice, I could use it as well. I started developing my intuitive abilities in September 2021, and I feel like, but that's what, 7 months ago, 8 months ago almost. And I sometimes have days where I feel like, why am I not like the people on a TLC show or a Bravo show? Or like I should be doing it this well, or I should be knowing all the things. And and like you said, it's not about having a destination. I think the only destination there is the other side. And if we feel like we met our destination, that means we probably are dead. So like we never stop learning while we are here in the physical body.
And I think be kind to yourself, Juan, because like I've seen you from the beginning of your journey, like because we've been like interacting since the start of your readings
Yeah,
together.
we have. Yeah.
There's such a growth in you, and I feel like your humbleness and your like you're open to suggestions and you're open to like feedback. I think that takes you places, and I think that also for people in general, right? Like be open to feedback. Not one way works all for everyone. So be open to feedback. Be kind to yourself. I think you are where you are because you're meant to be there. I think that's also something I hold on to because me being a perfectionist at one point of my life was like, I want to be here. Like I was 28 doing something like accomplished a career that somebody who in their mid 30s would have because I was driven. But all of it came, it was like that. What did they say? That pile of cards that builds up. You build that little pile of cards, and all of it flew away, and I was stuck on back to ground, actually below ground level of where I had started in my journey, and one step at a time. And like you'll take 6 steps back, but you'll eventually make those steps up, and you're meant to be in your journey where you are presently because there's a life lesson there with it as well. And I think smell the fucking roses. Sorry, I swore, but like smell the roses. Just like be kind to yourself and just like live with integrity. And I think also social media makes it that you have to portray this perfect life or this life of, oh, I have this, I have that together, I have that, and all the superficial stuff. But what are you feeding your mind? What are you feeding your soul? So I think feed your soul, and then everything else will follow suit. Like, and the thing is that it's always like if you worry about money, money evades you. When you say, okay, I'm financially stable, I have my bills are being paid, my needs are being taken care of, you're sorted. Of course, to people listening to this, they might be like, okay, but you don't have this debt, or you don't have this, or you don't have those circumstances. But nobody has a perfect life. You don't know what somebody's handed. So if I'm giving you the idea that I have a perfect life, then it's far from the truth.
Oh, preach. I think that's a wonderful note to end our conversation on. That was so wonderful to hear. And I heard things that, especially this week that we're recording this episode, because I usually, as folks probably can tell, I record an episode with somebody, then I publish it 2-3 weeks later. And this particular week, while we are talking right now, I could use everything's about social media and perfectionism. I mean, even today I was thinking, I posted a tarot, one of those tarot reels today on Instagram, and I felt like, I'll be honest. Sometimes I look at the views. We all look at the views and the likes
Right.
and the comments. I think most of us do. And I get so caught up in that. I have to remind myself, I'm not doing this because I want to get to a certain number destination, so to speak. Or like, of course, having followers is great, and having listeners on the podcast, it's great. I want to see those numbers go up. Of course, I do. But if I do all this with only the goal of getting numbers, accomplishing numbers, then I'm no longer enjoying doing this stuff. I'm no longer enjoying doing readings or doing the videos or recording these episodes. So, yeah, it's so easy to compare ourselves to other people, and it's all about enjoying the journey, enjoying the process, and not so much about, I mean, it's nice to have the goal of getting somewhere, but the journey to that somewhere is so much fun.
It is. It is. And I mean, I reposted your reel and I'm so proud of you. And I was like, good job.
Thank
Like
you.
I came at it with like a proud mama kind of bear, kind of like, I'm so proud of you. Like, look at where you're going. And it's like baby steps to where you want to be. I think even with my social media, yeah, I look at who's viewed it and stuff, but then I'm like, who cares? Because I think you know me, I'm very unfiltered even on my social media. It's like authentic me. It's not this facade of like this perfect life where it's like posting. I talk about my mental health, talk about, PTSD, talk about stuff that I've gone through. Being real, I think it's also important because what kind of generation are we living in where everything is superficial? People don't know how to have a conversation. Everything is through social media, and it's like, oh, you're deeming somebody's self worth based on their social media or who they are or the projection of who they are. So I think be kind to yourself. If you are doing it for the right reasons, you'll get the followers, you'll get the people that are genuinely interested in, using your services as well. So I think be kind to yourself, one, too. Stop being such a perfectionist.
Totally. And even if there are like if there is no followership, or you don't get 100,000 followers, or even 10,000 or 1,000, just the enjoying the work. When I say work, not necessarily paid work, just the work of creating content, doing readings, doing interviews, just enjoying that, because that is sometimes even more rewarding than the results to come after that, you know?
Exactly. And like sometimes you don't even realize that you inspire people. Like I
Hmm.
had one of my coworkers reach out to me and she was like, Priyanka, I've been dealing with depression. And she's like, your daily affirmations, the daily quotes, the stuff you post, I look forward to it because it's like my daily dose of like uplifting. And I was like, okay, if I'm reaching out to people unintentionally, I'm like, that's amazing because I feel like that's what I'm doing. It's like I'm not posting this stuff for attention. It's stuff that I genuinely deeply believe in. And like if my beliefs and my values can help other people feel good, then yeah, I'm doing something good. in this world. And I think that's it. Like you have to come at it as like you're one little pebble in a big ocean and you're still making that impact. No matter how small that impact is, you're still making an impact in somebody's life. And you never know. And because not everyone's going to message you, oh my God, I love it. Thank you for posting that. Life changing. Most people are going to take that in, digest it, process it, and then maybe come back and be like, hey, that was useful. Thank you. And a lot of people are too ashamed to be like, okay, thank you for posting that or whatever. So I think if you're that little pebble and you're still a pebble, you're still something better than nothing. So
100%. 100%. Well, share with our listeners how they can learn more about you, where they can find you if they want to reach out to you.
Instagram. So my Instagram is Priyanka's Gram. So PRIYANKASGRAM.
That's so simple. That sounds like a celebrity. Speaking of, clout and followers, that's such a celebrity handle, Priyanka's Gram. That's super cute. And I know that in your Instagram, if I may share, in your Instagram bio, you do have a Calendly link for people to book practice sessions with you. So can you share more about what those entail and what you usually do in those practice sessions?
So I do intuitive readings. Usually it would be like a 30-minute intuitive reading. I if I do collect money, it's because I believe in money, like the energy exchange, and whatever money I collect, I'm actually donating at this point because for me, it's more so about learning and just enjoying the craft. So I don't have like one of those like, oh, let's pull out cards because I'm not a tarot reader. Even though I like tarot cards read for myself, mine is more so intuitive reading. So I channel people who passed on, loved ones. I channel messages that are meant to come through to you from the universe as well, and like just be able to guide you. Like I'm not able to be predicting the future, but I'm able to guide you in the given moment if you need, advice in regards to decisions or like taking that next step. And just I think also having a background in life coaching, like inspiring you to feel good about yourself and being wherever you are at the journey, like helping you, get that reading, like whatever that second step or that little push that you might need, I would be happy to help you and like chat.
Beautiful. Well, anyone's listening who is interested, reach out to Priyanka at Priyanka's Gram. And thank you so much for conversing with me and for having our listeners listen into our wonderful conversation.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor to be on this. Thank you.